Hi, welcome to Money Talks, the Journal Times online business show. I'm business reporter Michael Burke, and with me today is Jay Christie, the Executive Director. Is that your proper title at the Racine Zoo?
President and CEO.
President and CEO, okay, well thanks for the correction. But this is really going to be a fun show. And by the way, make sure you stick around because we're going to have a couple of very interesting guests toward the end of the show. So Jay, today we're going to talk about the business of running a zoo. Even though you receive some public funding, you still need to run the zoo as a business. You've got to make revenues and expenses more or less match each other. And that's going to be what we'll talk about. But first of all, just a quick introduction. How long have you been in the zoological field, and how long have you been at this zoo?
My first job at a zoo was back in 1990,
Mm-hmm.
and I've worked here since 1998.
Yeah. So almost 15 years here.
That's right.
Yeah. Has it been fun?
It sure has.
It seems like a fun job.
Yeah, I really count myself lucky. And this was really all I ever wanted to do, was to work at a zoo. In fact, they tell me zoo was the first word I learned how to read.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So you always just were fascinated by animals and zoos and things?
That's right. It actually predates memory.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. The Racine Zoo is about a $2 million a year business, and I think it would be good to talk about where that money comes from. So let's cut that pie up a little bit. And one of the things that got me thinking is your annual report gives a couple of pie charts on that topic. But you get 35% of your revenue from the city of Racine, correct?
That's right.
And how does that compare historically with, let's say, when you got here?
In absolute dollars, it would be slightly more. However, as a percentage of our income, it's vastly reduced, just because up until 1988, the city of Racine ran the zoo and really underwrote 100% of the zoo's operations. So it is now down to 35%. So in absolute dollars and in factoring for inflation, the city of Racine taxpayer is paying much less now than that taxpayer was paying in 1988 for the zoo.
And I think, didn't you tell me that you can easily remember a time when it was 50 to 60% of the zoo's revenue?
That's true. When I first arrived, that was about the percentage.
Yeah. So obviously that has caused changes, and we'll get to that in a second. But before we do, now the county, what's the arrangement, the financial arrangement with Racine County? When do you get money from them? How much do you get from them, and for what purposes?
Up until just a year or two before I arrived, the county didn't contribute to the operations of the zoo, and only infrequently would contribute to capital improvements at the zoo. I'm happy to say that in the last 15 years we've seen the county really step up in some big ways on both of those fronts. In terms of operations, we've seen contributions as large as $100,000 a year. This year it'll probably be closer to $30,000. But the county typically partners with us also on major capital improvements too. There again in the six-figure range. For example, the building we're in right now, the county contributed $300,000 to this phase of our capital improvement.
And by the way, mention where we are. I think I forgot to do that. What is this building?
We're right in the Benstead Discovery Center, which is at the very entrance to the zoo.
Yeah. It's a great little building. So because of the declining city revenue over the years, the zoo took a huge step in about 4 years ago, when you started admissions, and that now constitutes 18% of your revenues, according to your annual report. How has that been accepted by the public? Going from a free zoo to a admission-based zoo.
Well, I didn't expect a lot of pushback on the topic, and candidly got less pushback than I expected. So I think it was something that the community can get its arms around and understands, that zoos need to make ends meet.
And you didn't have a whole lot of good alternatives, really.
No, we really didn't, other than let the zoo get smaller and smaller and potentially just fade away altogether.
Special events comprise 15% of your revenues, contributions and bequests 13%. Who have been some of the major contributors over the years?
Among the top two would have to be the Charles and Jennifer Johnson
Mm-hmm.
and Dorothy and Leo Janowski.
Okay.
Both would be in that seven-figure investment range. So
Yeah.
the zoo you see today, we owe a great debt to those two families.
Right. And then membership, 6% of your revenues. On the expenses side, what are the biggest, are you like any other business where salaries and revenues are a huge cost of the operation?
They certainly are. The largest piece of the pie, in fact, followed by animal food and supplies, maybe predictably. Or alternatively, utilities in aggregate would probably be even greater than that, but no one utility exceeds
Mm-hmm.
animal food and supplies.
Mm-hmm. So what are the more expensive animals to feed and why?
Our big cats,
Mm-hmm.
all the big meat eaters, and then pound for pound, probably a lot of the fish eaters, things like the penguins and birds like that.
Because protein's expensive, of course.
That's right. Those fish don't grow on trees, you know.
What are some of the other expenses of running a zoo? How about the cost of the animals? When does your zoo pay for an animal and when does it not pay for an animal?
Typically, anytime an animal is coming here, we pay for the transportation. But increasingly, it's less and less likely that we're purchasing the animal outright because they're usually here on some kind of a breeding loan,
Mm-hmm.
or perhaps it's a donation altogether. And when I think about all the animals, or more specifically, the 2 litters of lions that we had here in the last 6 years, I don't think we were compensated for any of those because they're part of a larger species survival
Mm-hmm.
plan. And now we've got Racine lions all over North America, as far away as Mexico, in fact.
Wow, wow. Are you still breeding them? Or is it infrequent, or what?
That male is kind of a genetic superstar here in the U.S., so we've been encouraged to expose him to a number of females. The female he's with now is too young to breed, but I anticipate that within the next 2 years we'll probably have at least one more litter of lions here at the zoo.
Mm-hmm. What other animals are you breeding, and how does that intensify the job of the keepers or the curators?
Some of the animals that we're really concentrating on now are our African penguins. We've had success breeding them in the past, and we do adjust the conditions to your point that keeps the keepers on their toes and makes the conditions most like they might be in the wild for animals like penguins to breed, for example, providing them with some kind of a nesting material. And then another animal that we've got our fingers crossed on are our lesser adjutant storks. We're one of only 3 zoos outside of Asia really working with this endangered species. And
Where is it from?
it's from, originally that they range from India as far east as Java. And if they've laid some eggs for us so far, but they haven't yet brought any of them to the point of hatching. If that happens, we'll be only the 2nd zoo in North America to have a red lesser adjutant storks.
Wow. So do you use an incubator, or do you just hope that the female will sit on the egg and hatch it, or what?
We do have the capacity to incubate some eggs, but we haven't gone to that step yet. The one institution, for example, using the storks that has been successful in breeding them was the Bronx Zoo, which is where our birds came from. And they did say it did take multiple years for first-time parents to kind of get through that learning curve of bringing eggs to term and then raising the young.
Yeah, yeah. On the day-to-day operations side again, so you're feeding animals. What's the range of foods that you're feeding? Is it raw meat for the big cats? Is that what they're eating?
You could say that, although it comes to us packaged in 5-pound tubes, really, that's frozen. That's nutritionally complete. So in other words, you've got the aspects of all sorts of, not just meat per se, but internal organs and bones and things like that that these animals would eat in the wild. That said, we do keep things interesting for them, and in addition to the non-edible enrichment, we're always giving things like um, the hock of a steer,
Oh.
a slaughter, or an oxtail, we call them,
Oh,
that they can chew at, and that's good for their dental health, among other
Oh, yeah.
things.
like you would give your dog a pig's ear or something.
That's right.
Uh-huh. And what are some of the other foods that come to the zoo on a weekly basis for the animals? I know you feed a lot of fruits and vegetables, right?
We sure do. Hay, of course, and alfalfa.
Do you buy fruits and vegetables at a normal grocery store, or do you get them from wholesalers, or what?
There are a combination of sources, and we're lucky that some of our local vendors keep us in mind when they have produce or bakery goods that
Oh.
may be reaching their expiration date but are still good.
Bakery goods? You can feed animals bakery goods? Is that
Yeah,
good for them?
you want to
Is
move
that
into
good
the
for
food,
them?
don't you? In moderation, but things like the kangaroos, for example, typically get bread.
Oh.
Max the orangutan, his favorite bakery of all time has to be O&H cinnamon raisin bread.
Oh.
That's
Uh-huh.
right.
And then you're feeding, I'm sure, a lot of specialized foods that are probably very expensive too, right? Certain chows for certain kinds of animals, where they're specifically formulated for them.
That's right. And I guess it depends on your definition of expensive, but you're right. There are a surprising number of diets out there that are prepared exclusively for rather specific families of animals, like marmosets and tamarins, for example, which are rather small monkey. A chow that looks much like dog chow, specifically for bears, for example. Another one that's eaten largely by primates that's just called leaf eater, which is for animals that we would call folivorous because they're herbivores that primarily eat leaves in the natural state.
Yeah. And then you mentioned hay and straw and things like that. Do you get those from local farms, that type of thing, or what?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Right here in Racine County, actually.
Yeah. What about the medical side of running a zoo? Where do your expenses come in? What kinds of animals get vaccinations or medications of any kind?
Probably no real rule of thumb. I can tell you that all the birds get vaccinated for West Nile virus, for example. A lot of the cats get some of the same shots that you might expect a kitten to get at home when they're born. And then a few animals do get medication for things like arthritis.
So West Nile virus, which has come onto the scene in the last, 10 years or something like that, when you say all the birds, you have an aviary full of parakeets, right?
That's right.
So are you saying you have to vaccinate every parakeet? And how often does that happen?
Yes, we do, and every year.
Really? That must be some kind of rodeo to catch 300 parakeets and vaccinate them one at a time. Huh?
That's right.
Other kinds of medications and things, is that a big part of running a zoo? Is do animals get sort of preventative medications other than that example, or not so much?
It really runs the full spectrum. One question we get often is, do we have a full-time vet here? We do not. We do have a part-time consulting vet, though, who comes in twice a week, and then over and above that as needed.
That often? Wow.
That's right. And he's got a large mammal specialty, but he's been working with us so long that a lot of full-time zoo veterinarians will consult with him because he's
Yeah. And of course, then there's the dental care, right? Because we had a picture in the Journal Times recently of one of your Andean bears, I believe it was, right? Getting a tooth cleaning, and you had to
That's right.
put it under, and that's got to be an expensive process to hire a vet and put the animal down under and clean the teeth and all of that.
Good point. In total, we probably spend about $40,000 a year on veterinary services here.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Why don't we bring out one of the guests that we alluded to?
Oh, I'd
earlier.
love to. Do you know what this is, Mick?
Well, I happen to know, but go ahead and introduce him.
It's an ornate box turtle We call him Claw around the zoo here, but
This particular guy.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
They are native to the dairy state here, but they're also an endangered species for a combination of reasons, not the least of which being over collection illegally for the pet trade. They're also hit by an inordinate number of automobiles every year, and of course, like so many other animals, they suffer from habitat loss. So we're proud to say, and we've been doing this for close to 14 years now, that we partnered with the Department of Natural Resources to head start ornate box turtles here. And,
so how often are you able to release them into the wild, or how many in a year's time?
It varies. It usually averages about 2 dozen, though.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I'm going to put this one down, and then we're going to show you what they look like when they come out of the egg. And by head starting, what we do is we take, well, on occasion we've actually taken the eggs themselves, but if not, then hatchlings.
I thought you were going to pull a turtle out of your pocket.
From the DNR, and
look at that little cute thing.
that's right, and he's actually even grown a little bit. But after
the shell is so shiny and pretty on the new one compared to the older one.
That's right.
It's very sort of jewel-like.
It absolutely is.
I don't know if we can see that on camera or not, but it's really pretty.
And after living with us for just 9 months, the course is really a fall, winter, and spring. They're actually as big as a ornate box turtle would be after living for 5 years in the wild. At that point, they're big enough that they're not nearly as attractive to the many predators who would make a mouthful of them.
Oh, so how old is this one?
Probably just a few months.
Wow. So obviously they start as eggs, right?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And how many eggs does a box turtle lay? Any idea?
The older ones might lay 8 or 9.
That's all?
The younger ones sometimes 2 or 3 or 4.
Wow. And do you have a pretty good hatch rate for them?
Yes, we do. In fact, we're known by the DNR of all the partners they've had. They've had over a dozen over the years as raising the most robust or the biggest in our 9-month time allotment.
So what do you feed a little guy like that?
We actually feed them a commercially available turtle chow.
Yeah, it doesn't really want to come out. Maybe I'm handling him too much. It's really pretty though. So you're releasing them at about what age?
At only about, at less than a year. But because they're at that point, because of the ideal conditions we've got them under, they're about the size of a 5-year-old turtle in the wild, so they're much, much larger than that. They wouldn't be as big as the one we just saw, but much larger than that.
Yeah, yeah. Very, very nice. Very, very pretty. So what else did you bring? I know you brought something else that's going to be pretty spectacular.
Okay, we could, I bet we could find something.
And while you're doing that, what sorts of, you know, you had a huge capital improvement a few years ago, this whole end of the zoo with the new gateway into the zoo and the new sort of store and the new entrance and this new Discovery Center. Do you have other things on the drawing board for the future? Other you know, major projects of any kind or minor projects of any kind?
We do have enough projects to last us for many years to come. The next one that I'm excited about would be allowing our orangutans, Max and Jenny, who many people around here know by name.
Love them, yeah.
And have lived here almost all their lives.
Yeah.
To get them into an outside exhibit, and that's something we'd hope to bring
An indoor or outdoor one, right? Or just outdoor?
They would continue to have an indoor exhibit for the winter in particular, but also an outdoor exhibit for the summer months.
Yeah.
And we'd expect to bring that online probably May of 2014.
Oh, so that'll begin this year?
That's our sincere hope.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you're right. We do have one more friend here. It's another reptile. His name's Artemis, and he is a Colombian red-tailed boa.
So how big is he, and how much would he? How long is he, and how much would he weigh?
He's almost 8 feet now
Come
and
back.
weighs about 35 pounds.
I guess I'm not gonna pull him back unless he wants to come back. He's already sort of wrapping himself down there. So you said about 35 pounds?
That's right.
Uh-huh. Oh, hi. Now you're coming back. Yeah, don't be camera shy. Come on.
So, like Claw and a lot of the other smaller animals at the zoo, although you might not see them here if you were coming as a paying guest, they're available for all sorts of educational programs that we offer throughout the year.
You must take him out, right? He gets handled a lot, he gets to go out and
Yes, he
be in
does.
front of children and things like that?
That's right.
He's one of your stars? Artemis, huh? Yeah. He's really... So what would he eat in Colombia, in the wild?
He would eat
Small animals, some small mammals or something?
That's exactly right. He'd eat everything from monkeys to small rodents like agoutis to all manner of birds.
Mm-hmm. And we all know how a constrictor kills its prey, but is it stealth? Do they sneak up on the animal? Or is his camouflage, is he gonna lie in the underbrush and just wait for the animal to come along and all of a sudden he's ensnared, or what?
With Boas, I would say a little bit of both, but as you can see, with this color pattern, boy, wouldn't that blend into so many leaves on the forest floor.
Yeah. And then they don't eat very often, right? They're one meal and they're good for a few weeks or something?
That's right. And they do have the ability to detect warm-blooded prey because of the heat sensors on the side of their face.
Oh.
So it really is kind of like having infrared night vision or something.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And of course the flicking of the tongue, they're tasting the air around them, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So how many snakes have you got at the zoo? You've got a couple of new green boas here in the Discovery Center, and you've got him. Roughly how many snakes do you have?
Roughly a dozen snakes at the zoo.
And a timber rattler over here too?
That's right. We also have been working with other conservation organizations on the eastern Massasauga rattlesnake, which is another endangered species here in the state of Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's our hope to eventually be breeding those at the zoo too for ultimately release back into the wild.
Now their native area is the bluffs on the western edge of the state, right?
That's right.
And why are they endangered? Are people hunting them or what?
That's right.
Because it would seem like the bluffs are still there. It wouldn't seem like there'd be a tremendous loss of habitat, or has there been?
I think, to your earlier point, they're still killed in larger numbers than we'd like. In fact, there was a bounty on rattlesnakes in our state in our lifetimes, actually. So in some small way, they're probably still recovering from that. And then, maybe not to the extent that the box turtles are, but they're also considered an unusual pet that a certain number of collectors would want to have in their possession.
Yeah. You mentioned a minute ago about getting an outdoor part of the enclosure for Max and Jenny, the orangutans. What might come after that? Any new buildings at the zoo or anything like that? Or any new animals we can look forward to in, let's say, 2013 or the near future?
We'll probably be making some upgrades to our contact area where we've got domestic animals, and there's a very good chance we'll be welcoming back camel rides, which will only be the second time in our rather lengthy history that we've offered rides on camels.
And then any other new animals? The zoo once had otters. Those are a lot of fun. Any chance of bringing back an animal like that at some point?
I hope so. We actually do own a number of otters around the U.S.
Oh.
I think the closest one's probably at the Lincoln Park Zoo. There's an otter that was born right here in Racine. So I'd like to think that within the next 5 years we could have an otter exhibit back here at the zoo.
Yeah, yeah. Do you plan to retire at this zoo, or are you leaving your options open?
I'll leave my options open, but the idea of retiring here is not an uncomfortable one for me. It's certainly, always a new challenge, and like
Yeah.
you said at the beginning of the show, it's a pretty fun job most of the time.
Uh-huh, yeah, yeah. Well, what's the, I would think the least fun part of your job would be when an animal passes? Is that accurate or not?
Well, especially when it's an animal where it was unexpected, or a younger animal.
Mhm.
But in reality, for the most part, animals in zoos, or at least AZA accredited zoos, live much longer than their wild counterparts.
Mhm.
So typically when an animal passes away, there's some solace in the fact that
It's had a
probably
good
lived
life, right?
much longer.
Good long
That's
life.
right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Jay Christie, President and CEO of the Racine Zoo, thanks a lot for inviting us out today for the show. It's been a lot of fun and a really cool place to do a show. You've been watching Money Talks, the Journal Times online business show. Thanks a lot to our producer of the day, Greg Shaver, and thanks to Jay Christie. I'm business reporter Michael Burke. Please join us again.